I'm Jill Olesker. It's almost hard to remember how I came into storytelling. I feel like I came in a little bit through a back door because I was teaching, working with children a lot, and going to Bank Street College. And at that college, there were actually 3 different teachers. Each of them taught storytelling. Each of them were very, very different. And I basically fell in love with it. And the more I taught in the classroom, the more I wanted to just be doing storytelling. And also, I really loved hearing the stories that the children made up. So between the two, I realized that was what I really wanted to do. And the other thing I want to say is that I became very interested in having stories be a way to invite, at that time it was mostly children, to invite children to engage with nature. And I have a mentor who I was also working with at that time, whose name is Richard Lewis. He has a beautiful organization called the Touchstone Center. And he, for years, he's still doing it, works with children and metaphor and stories, and helping them connect with nature through that. So all of those things sort of wove themselves together and then moved on to adults and many other things.
I'm Jo Yanow-Schwartz. Hi. I am not a storyteller, although I tell many stories. And I find the more that I live, the more stories I have to tell. I have been a special ed teacher. I began wanting to have a theater career, which I did for a very short time. And that has kind of influenced me in many, many ways. I'm grateful for the courses that I took, the history of theater and the various roles that I took. I've been a magazine editor during a lot of my career. And during those years, I interviewed artists. I was working in the art and art material and art business end. And everyone had a story. Artists had a story about how they got to be where they were. Business owners got stories, wonderful stories. Even the creation of a pencil or a new kind of brush involved a story. So I became interested in how people think, what they created and why they created it, and what the trajectory of their lives was. And that continues to this day. I can get in later how we ended up with the stories about Woodstock and the area, which we will tell about in our storytelling segment. I'm also a reflexologist, and I do a number of other things. And currently, since I am a jack of all trades, I am a senior fitness coach, which kind of relates to everything I've ever done in the world, because my late husband was a marathon runner. We used to work out at gyms, and he had some stories too. So we ended up publishing a book, which led me to Jill. So it's a very long story, but not such a long story when you begin to see how your mind works.
Jo and I both really felt that in interviewing the elders that we did, really gave a sense of place to Woodstock, of this place. And then there were also some very universal things that were true as well. And when we started this project, Our Lives in the Mountain, I was kind of new to Woodstock, and Jo had been here a very long time. So I think that dynamic is true when you hear the stories as well. That it created a sense of place, whether you've been here for a short time, a long time, or just coming and you've never been to Woodstock.
There was a book that started even before that, which was a book that my husband and I published. which was a publication of an Alf Evers book that had been published in 1955, and he said it was his favorite book. And Arthur and I published it with beautiful illustrations by a local artist, a landscape artist, an environmentalist by the name of Christy Shield. And her daughter created the picture on the mountain of Woodstock's mountain, which is overlooked. And out of that, we got an art council grant. And out of that, when Jill and I decided to do these oral histories, we gathered together a group of colleagues. So there were at some point 6 of us, because to handle 22 oral histories is an awful lot. You sit down with these people, they become your personal stories. You get involved in your life. Jill has a story of one of the elders who had a bear who went to the bus with him every morning. I have a story of how a farmer's son had a pet raccoon. I mean, the personal stories, these are love stories about the soil, about their parents, about their grandparents, about the history of a land. All neighborhoods have stories, but this is unique because we've kept our landscape. And the people that come here do have a special feeling. They get it quickly about the people and about the land and about the ethos of community and the stories that we want to tell. There's many more stories. We're just going to tell snippets of the wonderful stories that we have. And we have given these presentations at the Artist Society. We've given them in schools. We've had art projects where kids get together, kids that have never known that there was a Hudson River and a park in Kingston. So we take the stories and then we bring the kids to the riverfront, and they blow their mind. I'm going to tell my mommy I didn't know it was here. So we've been able to connect and make stories, and these kids then write their own stories. So stories and stories and stories, they go on.
Also, there's a feeling that I think is very important, that those stories, if they're not told either by the people that experienced it or at least the next, their children, and in this case, it was directly the people that experienced all the stories that people will hear, that those stories will be lost. And they're really part of the history of this place, and also of the land and of different times. So there was a feeling of urgency in the best way of having these stories recorded, like not an anxious urgency, but more an urgency with the knowledge that they could be lost. When you're listening to a story, whether it's oral history or folktale or personal story, first of all, there's a feeling of community between the listeners and the teller. And that feeling is, no matter how many people there are who are listening, it's very intimate. The other thing I always love about storytelling is, to me, there's no sense of time. When you're listening, there's no sense of time. You're just in the present. And even though storytellers have a lot of different styles, and I beg to differ that Jo says she's not a storyteller, maybe not by profession, but you're definitely a storyteller in a beautiful way. Anyway, even though there's all these different styles, to me, that is the one universal piece, that real presence with tellers and listeners. And the other thing I just want to say, and then I'll happily pass the talking stick to you, Jo, is that I really feel that when you are in the midst of a story, like hearing it or telling it, because it's crucial, that circle of both reciprocal thing of listener and teller, to me, you're part of like a vastly long tradition. And it's really beautiful to connect to that. And I get the same feeling if I'm in a forest or in, by the ocean. You're part of something, even though it's so intimate, you're also part of something much bigger than yourself. I think people long for that, for both those things.
We are stories, and stories go back before recorded time. We have many ways of telling stories. The Aboriginals told their stories on rocks, and then they got the message and they went from place to place. I think we all have a story. We have a story almost every day. And the magic is you don't really know that you have gravitated to something that moves you and that helps you live your life in a story. Stories make us know our humanity. It connects us with other people, because Jill tells a wonderful story about a little Japanese girl who's ostracized and becomes a painter and paints the forest. It's a wonderful story, a universal story.
Chinese book, wasn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Tai Mei and the Magic Brush.
And people of all ages go, oh, yes. I'm making that connection. We make connections. We make connections in the stories that we read in books. We go to a particular book for a particular reason or stay with it. And they recommend it to somebody because the story has moved us. It's all story. Everything is story. What I did today is a story. So to put it in a nutshell and to listen to an event where wonderful storytellers like Joe, like Jim, are going to be telling the kernel of what they found to bring to others is a wonderful thing and a wonderful idea. So I'm very proud to be a part of this as a non-storyteller. But the universality and the community of it, and whenever you're in a room together with storytellers, they end up feeling like they're their own brothers and sisters because they've felt the same way, or they've had their feelings expressed, or they've connected with someone else, and they've learned something new. That's a story.
To have the opportunity to hear so many different tellers is so rich. I mean, when I looked at the schedule, I was looking at each piece of it, and the whole time I was thinking, I want to go to that. It was like, there's no one who's on that schedule that I don't want to be part of it and to hear. So it's a very unusual opportunity to have that experience where there's just so much offered. It's like diving deep into storytelling. And whether you've already heard tellers or done it a lot, been audience or teller a lot, or never heard storytelling, I just think it's a really beautiful, rare opportunity.
I would add to that a hope, and maybe I can push the audience a little bit. I hope there'll be some people of different ages, because I remember when we tried to run a little bus to bring in some of the elders to hear the stories that we told from the elders about them or their buddies.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. And when Jill talks to young people, and when we worked with, in classrooms and after school programs, the kids just light up. And for our point of view, it's the stories, but it's also the land. So I just want to bring that up again. The community where we live is something that we're very proud of, and we recognize its history and its complications, and its universality as well. And to have different ages be part of the communal experience, to me, would be
exquisite.
Yeah,
right?
would be great.
I also want to say one other thing. And that is that one of the things that Joe and I did was we actually had a group of children tell the stories, like read the stories of the elders to an adult audience. And it was a really exquisite experience, I think, for everybody. There's a little piece of me that kind of hopes that maybe some people will be inspired to find out stories about where they live, or, share those stories with some other people. And seeing the children do it was really beautiful because then they were engaged, without saying, okay, now you have to listen to this story, or no, they were actually engaged and part of it. And I think there were some of the elders who did come when when the children did it. And so that was
the grandmothers.
Full circle.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And then we find out we have stories.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
That's part of oral history.
Yeah.